Yeah.
Welcome back, folks, gentlemen, to another episode of Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. Skipped a week, but we're back for yet another one. There's going to be a lot that we have to try to figure out to find a way to talk for an hour. I'm not sure we can come up with topics, but before we do, let me jump into some intros. Top left is Mark. He hails his own. Bottom left is Bob. You can find him under Neophyte. Bottom right is John. He is Boone. I am Derek. You can find me at Silent Threat. Feel free to come by, mix it up, have some fun, get involved in the conversation. We just enjoy it, regardless of how many times people argue. So I guess we can jump right into this. Before we talk about the giant elephant in the room, I'm just going to point out that we're looking at a major change under center, a big time deal. Jake Fromm has been added to the practice squad. So we have a future in place. No, I'm kidding. Anyways, all right, guys, I got to jump into it. Dan Snyder, we have to talk about Dan Snyder. We have to talk about Irsay. 6 months ago, everybody was talking about how much of a blowhard Irsay is, that he's thrown his quarterback under the bus. The guy's a waste of time and space. Now he's our best friend because he took Dan Snyder out to the woodshed and just kind of took a couple of boards to his back with the hopes that some other people would join in on it. So react, guys. We'll take a couple minutes. I'd love to hear some.
John's ready, man. John's like, get out of my way.
No, I just want to
notes.
I just want to address the Irsay thing because I'm going to give you a geopolitical analogy here, if you can wrap your mind around that. Irsay is like Ukraine, he's like, hey, it's the most corrupt government in Europe, and nobody has any respect for him, puppet government, probably stealing all the military funds we send them. And then Russia invades. So, and my analogy is, yes, but Irsay is Ukraine. He's not perfect. He's got a lot of baggage. We don't really trust him. But then there's Dan Snyder, who is absolutely evil Russia, who has invaded our godforsaken franchise and tried to stake claim for the last 30 years or however long it's been. So anyway, and then, the enemy of the friend of my, what is it? The enemy
of my enemy is my friend.
Is my friend,
Yeah, I'm not prepared to go all political on it necessarily, but I will admit here in this room that my first reaction was anybody but Irsay. If it had been anybody but Irsay, I think my first reaction would have been fucking finally, right? So if Irsay won, who is it? Haslam is another one that I would have had, I think, the same reaction. Irsay, I love that he said it and that it's out there now. And I was just reading before we went live the Sports Illustrated piece that came out on him, and he made it sound like it was all about his reason for speaking out was because he has daughters and granddaughters, and he's all very concerned about workplace stuff. Yes, 100%. Yes, he's on the right track. I wish I hadn't had that gut reaction that anyone but Irsay.
But Irsay,
I'd like one more guy to step up and join him. There's been nobody else.
There's also been nobody that has come out and lambasted him for speaking up. He may have even been planned at some level that he was going to be the one to speak up. But I just
by who? By the other owners?
Oh, I think the NFL probably knew the owners probably knew that he was going to speak up ahead of time. But I don't know. I'll just say this: Irsay's got a lot of baggage, but as far as I know, the only issues he's ever had are related to personal addictions. He's never been accused of being a horrible, abusing people, et cetera, as far as I know. I think there's a little bit of a distinction there for people that want to lump him in with Dan Snyder. And I'm not saying.
Oh, no, no. I didn't do that. No.
But I did see a lot of that on social media. If it came from Irsay, it might as well not have come.
My gut reaction, and then I'll shut up about it, and it hasn't really changed in a couple of days, was just to kind of say, oh God, if it had been anyone but Irsay, I would have been more excited about it. With him, I mean, the guy's, to me, he's just always been kind of a clown, right? A guy who's out there. So
did it cross anyone else's mind that the reason he might have been the one that came out is because if you're going to threaten owners, purportedly threaten your fellow owners, that the guy who's probably the most at risk,
Is him.
what we know, comes out and says, I don't care about his threats, and I'm not scared of Dan Snyder. And I just had that thought cross my mind. Actually,
what occurred to me is that Irsay's skeletons are already hanging out in the front yard. You know, I can't imagine that Dan's got much in the way of dirt that the public doesn't already know about Jim Irsay, or isn't tied to the dirt that we already know about Jim Irsay. That was my, you know, my first thought. I had very mixed emotions when I saw it, Mark. I part of me absolutely agreed with your statement of, dear Lord, anybody but. And you're right, Jimmy Haslam would have been 32 on my list. I'm not sure that Davis wouldn't have been 31 on my list, and then Irsay would have been 30. And I say Mark Davis because I'm not sure Mark Davis is all there. So you can kind of, you know, write him off because he ought to be in an asylum somewhere.
Okay,
but
well, hold on. Then we can say, if it would have been Kraft, we can say, well, that guy cheats. He's lied his way to multiple Super Bowls. He's been
Mara has it out.
Which is where,
of all the people to be involved in calling someone out on a sexual harassment, it would be Kraft.
Right. Which is where I'm going with the back half of this. My second thought was, I'll bet you Jim doesn't have anything to hide when it comes to this type of stuff. I'd be willing to bet you that if we could see all of his private life, he's a devoted husband and father. And so it kind of feels like his house is clean in this regard, and he doesn't give a shit. So, dude, you want to go? Let's go. And I thought, what the hell?
You guys don't really believe that he's going to be the first and last owner to give an opinion on this, do you?
I don't think he'll be the last one, but he's definitely the first one to come out and do it this way.
And so far the only one. Derek, you what do you got, bro? You haven't had your say on this yet.
I think there's two ways that this is going to go. Finally, one of the 31 owners, because Green Bay doesn't have an ownership, they have a representative, you know, someone who represents the franchise. But of the 31 owners, 30 of which can speak out against Dan Snyder, unless he's that stupid, he would actually speak out against himself, which you never know. It's possible. This is the first one from the inner circle to come out and speak out and say that this is a plausible possibility and it needs to be explored, which is why this is more of a develop. It doesn't matter who it came from. It's a development. You know what I mean? Like, so does this mean that he's going to be ousted by the end of the year? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that he's going to definitely be voted out? No, it doesn't mean that. But this means something. It means that for everything that Dan Snyder has been found guilty of in the court of public opinion has finally made it into the inner circle. Okay. Like, the court of public opinion doesn't matter. So if you say we discredit Jim Irsay because he's got skeletons, if the court of public opinion mattered, Dan Snyder would have been voted out a long time ago. We're now in the circle. You see what I mean? So we've gotten past the court of public opinion because the guy who is almost borderline enemy of the state with the court of public opinion is speaking out against somebody else. So I think a lot of it is that this is groundbreaking. It's big time.
The big story. And I didn't mean to gloss over that part. I was talking about my initial reaction, which I still kind of say anybody, but yes, the truth is there is one out there now, and I suspect there'll be more. What I was kind of curious about is we've known for a couple of years that there is a body of owners already who there just weren't 24. Wasn't there an article a year and a half that said there were
5 years, there's been multiple.
That there were 18, or there was a number that just wasn't 24.
There have been anonymous quotes for several years now about there being a cadre,
a contingent of owners that want.
I don't know that I believe there hasn't been 24 for many years, but they've kind of screwed it up because, and I don't know, it's impossible to know what the motives are, what Goodell's motives are, what the overall ownership group's motives are. But, back when the Beth Wilkinson thing, when the report, we expected it to come out. I said then, this is going to be the biggest chance they have to get him out, because really, I think they want him out. They just have they just need a legit reason to vote him out so that it holds up with whatever legal recourse he takes, which he certainly will take But, you know, Goodell, it's just a sick, twisted way that this has transpired. So Beth Wilkinson submits her oral report per Roger's request to protect the privacy of, you know, all these people that don't really want privacy from all reports. And he at the same time, he's now saying that we have to wait for the evidence to come out. Do you mean the evidence that you went out of your way to suppress, Roger, by refusing to, by insisting that it not be a written report, and then refusing to even give us access to the gist of the oral report? So it's really sick and twisted on Goodell's part that he's now saying we got to wait for the evidence when we have plenty of evidence. We're just not privy to it. Only Roger Goodell and a handful of other people are privy to it. Because I really think there was enough in that Wilkinson report, just from what's been leaked out, that to sink him and to kick him off the island for good. But now we've got to wait. Now we've got to wait for the Mary Jo White, which is an NFL-funded investigation,
and the House Oversight Committee.
No, well, but if you notice, all through the ownership meeting, they didn't say shit about the 4 other active investigations, the attorney generals or that House Oversight Committee. It was all about when Mary Jo White's investigation is finished. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to walk that line where they're only going to do something if there's some bombshell in the Mary Jo White report. And that's exactly what Kevin Sheehan talked about ranted about for an hour on his show, is that's why he's so skeptical, is that, first of all, that's a very scoped investigation. And
I think they would still prefer, actually, I can almost bet you that the case is they would still prefer that Dan decide to sell the team on his own rather than them have to take this vote. They don't want to take this vote. They want him to come to the conclusion on his own. And I almost wonder, and I haven't seen this concept, actually, I've seen parts of this floated, but all separately. And I put it together in my head, so it could be completely wrong, but that this isn't a calculated move on the part of several owners to try and push some of the people that Dan might listen to into pulling him aside and saying, Dan, it's time to sell. Time to, like, i.e. Jerry Jones. That was the name that I saw thrown out there today, was that a lot of the what was said yesterday by Irsay could be construed as, look, we're lining this thing up and it's going to go to a vote. And Jerry, in his mind, going, I don't want this to go to a vote. So let me pull Dan aside and see if I can talk some sense into him, because if there's one guy Dan will listen to, maybe it's Jerry Jones. You know, I mean, it's not like Dan's going to come out of this hurting if he loses his business.
Hardly.
You know, Washington is valued at what, $5.5 billion or something at this point in time. A franchise that hasn't won a Super Bowl in over 20 years is worth $5+ billion, and he paid what, $800 million for it. Mm-hmm. That's not a bad investment for 24 years, guys.
And I don't think we can forget the fact that he is now 100% owner.
Mm-hmm.
Which means whatever check comes is his.
Makes you wonder how much the NFL is regretting letting him buy the guys out, 18 months ago?
I'm telling you, I've been saying this for a long time. I put my aluminum foil conspiracy hat on a year and a half ago, and I said that the NFL wants him to have full ownership of this team. And the reason being is because they know he can't afford it. I talked about how
he had to do the debt waiver, a massive debt waiver to allow him to borrow the money.
And did you read the article in the ESPN article?
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple people saying apparently that the NFL is now, because he already has a debt waiver, they have precedent to deny a second debt waiver to get a stadium.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the Al Capone IRS moment, right? That we're not raising your debt ceiling anymore, right, dude.
Could you imagine if the NFL owners are playing that deep of chess, that a year ago they gave him that money knowing that he was going to be up against a stadium, knowing the stadium was going to have to come out of his pocket, and they could say no and force him to sell?
I think these guys all play long game.
I don't know that there's no group think with the NFL owners. I don't think. I think you've got little mini group think. I think you got, man, I would disagree. I'm thinking with you've got 31 other billionaires. They think the way they think. And I'm sure there are factions and groups who agree, but to try to get 24 of those guys to sit down and agree on a strategy and to take a vote and then to push it through. I mean, the reason Dan's still an owner today is that they haven't been able to marshal that. Clearly the ball is rolling, right? The thing is rolling downhill, and you got an owner speaking out now out loud.
But Mark, they don't need 24 to deny a debt waiver.
Well, he doesn't need, he can just,
he doesn't have to go anywhere, right? He
doesn't have to build a new stadium. He can keep fans trickling into that rat hole for the next 2 years if he wants to. That's a myth. I mean,
if you read that whole article, though, the article was very specific, and several of the anonymous owners that were polled said, you know, look, the inability to get a new stadium made, he's costing everybody in the league money.
They're not going to kick him out if he doesn't build a new stadium. I don't buy that. If they're not going to kick him out for everything that we know already about that, what's transpired, that they can't use he didn't build a new stadium as a reason to kick him out.
Our single best hope remains the accumulation of all these data points and all these investigations and all the noise. No one thing is going to do it. I think it's going to be eventually all the different little factions of owners that at least I think there are. They'll all find some common ground. Some of them will be it'll be about the investigations. For some, it'll be about the debt ceiling. For others, it will be about shit that we've never even heard about yet, because there's a lot more than we've ever heard about. Eventually they'll take the vote and then they'll stand by it. But I'm not, if I had to predict, the over under it ain't within a year or two. I don't think. I think it's still way down the road.
I think they already have common ground, Mark. I think the most honest statement in that ESPN article was the statement of, Dan says this is a mafia and we all hate each other, but he's completely wrong. We all hate Dan Snyder.
Yes.
And
that's right.
And I think that's the common
ground.
Have the will?
Do they have the will to follow through on what they know is right and boot his ass out and suffer whatever the ramifications of that are?
And the answer to that, John, is I agree. I think they all hate him and they'd love to see him gone. I think that they would have had enough ammunition years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What's really changed is what I want to know. And
one thing that's changed is we were the #1 revenue generating franchise in the NFL, and we're now the 32nd. That's a pretty big fucking change. So,
what percentage of I don't know what percentage of the Mara's annual income it comes from Washington Commanders ticket sales. And
in the long haul, it's a big chunk of change.
So, Mark, to answer your question, the short answer is 40% of the gate goes to the visiting team. Okay, so if you sell 100,000 seats, the revenue on 40,000 of those goes to whatever the average of 40% goes to the visiting team. So we all joke and laugh that, there's 25,000 people in there. 18,000 of them are Philly fans. Dan Snyder doesn't give a shit. He wants his money. Well, the owner of the Eagles would rather there be 90,000 Redskins fans or Commanders fans in the stadium, because 40% of 90,000 is a hell of a lot bigger than 40% of 25,000.
Yeah. He's not making any extra money for putting 15,000 Eagles fans in the stadium.
Right. So if you extrapolate this out over the years and the erosion of ticket sales at the stadium, you can imagine how fast that 40% can sink into, we're talking pennies, because they're not selling the suites, the expensive stuff. They're not selling the gold, all the high end stuff.
They're doing Safeway ticket bundles, for God's sake.
I would like to see
literally
numbers.
doing
it's not
grocery store ticket bundles.
That's not just the stadium, though, is it? I mean, the NFL does revenue sharing on
all of the
paraphernalia,
all the merch,
right?
All the merch and the ticket sales. Well, what I'm saying is, I've never seen it. I'm not sandbagging here. I have never seen numbers, and I'm sure they're out there. What percentage of the average NFL team's income is impacted by what the Commanders are doing?
And I'd love
to see it. I mean, is it 2%? Is it 15%? It's not. I doubt it's any higher than that. That's just my gut. And I'm not. I don't want to get bogged down in that point. I'm just saying that if that motivation hasn't triggered them enough to vote the man off the fucking island yet.
One thing I want to see that I have not seen, I see the hate and vitriol directed deservedly at Snyder on social media every day. But I want to see fans make a statement, man. I'm so tired of people go to the, I mean, I know people are going to go to the games, but for God's sake, do something to make a statement. You know, sell the team chant every time there's a game or a public event, something for God's sake. There's a seat cushion giveaway this weekend, which is, it's like, seriously, you're going to, I mean, one of the greatest moments in Washington, iconic moments in Washington history, and you're going to do it at the homecoming game, which will, you know, I mean, that's fine. I know they're trying to make it exciting for fans to come. But if it was me, if I was going to be at that game, I'd be writing sell the team in big black magic marker on that thing, and I'd be whipping it on the field the first chance we got.
Here's to go back to my original point about how this team always seems to get it right, but they miss the minor details. You want to know who we play at home in 6 weeks?
Atlanta, probably, right?
The fucking Falcons. Okay, like, you want to talk about a seat cushion game? There's your seat cushion game. Not this weekend against the Packers.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think they're hoping that the fans are going to throw the seat cushions this time. I mean, they're based on this front office, they probably don't even know. There's probably nobody in there that even knows the reference that we're making. Plus, we're probably not going to score a touchdown anyway. And when are we going to throw them?
Well, so, I want to finish my point, and I know I've been talking a lot, so I'll pipe down after this. But the point I was getting at with the fan participation is and I've heard it even from you, Mark. There's this attitude that, you know, I just want to watch the football game and nothing's ever going to change. Snyder's never going to leave, so just shut the fuck up. That's a good component of the fan base. And my attitude to that is, you know what? As Mark would say, not with that attitude. It's not going to change. The fans have power, and we can make a ruckus. We made a ruckus with Bruce Allen, the whole turn in your fan card thing. We can increase pressure on everyone to get the clown out of Ashburn if we just make up our minds to do it. So if any week in Redskins history has ever demonstrated that it is possible that he might get removed, it's this week. Because one of the owners said, and I don't care if it's Jim Irsay or Robert Kraft, one of the owners literally said out loud, it is possible that the 24 owners may remove him. So for God's sake, if you're a fan and you can't stand what you've witnessed for the last 30 years, get off your ass and do something. Go to firedansnyder.com or write the sponsors or just chant at the game. Make a stink, for God's sake, because it can happen. But it's not going to happen if fans just accept this shit as we have for 30 years.
I think a big part of the reason we are where we are is exactly that, John. There's a certain part of the fan base led by 150 incredibly brave women and stubborn. I mean, I have nothing but the utmost admiration for Megan Imbert and her cohorts. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. You know, but they're not letting it go. And the fans, a significant portion of them on social media, are right there behind those ladies. And I think part of the reason we have gotten to this point is the fact that every day on Twitter, there's 250, 300, 400, 500, I don't even know, tweets, hashtagged release the report, hashtag sell the team. You know, they're not letting this go. And almost as important to me this week as what Irsay said is what wasn't said. Roger Goodell made no attempt to walk any of that back. Shad Khan got caught on the street waiting for his car. Made no attempt to walk any of that back. None of the owners that have had a microphone shoved in their face have made any attempt to gainsay what Jim Irsay said in public. They may not be willing to back him up, but no one has ridden in on a white horse to Dan Snyder's defense, even Jerry Jones.
Now, Jerry Jones came pretty close to it. He said it's all a media thing.
But that was probably closer than anybody else. That was before Irsay. That was at like 11 o'clock that morning.
He hasn't said anything since other than no comment. I mean,
Well, that's a good point, Bob. And I have not been active socially on social media enough to have been able to notice that. But I had noticed that there had been a lot of silence since Irsay spoke out from the other owners. That might be the most promising thing that I've heard tonight.
I'm trying to remember the exact question. I saw a video of Roger Goodell's press conference, and I think the question was something to the effect of, were you surprised that Jim Irsay came out and made the statements he made about Dan Snyder? And Goodell went, no.
Yeah, that was probably the first
long
time
pregnant pause, and somebody was like, is that it? And he went, what? I answered the question. Next question. I was like, wow. All right.
Well, it doesn't make it any better that apparently Jones and Kraft got into almost a fist fight about Roger Goodell getting extended over the weekend too.
Yeah, Roger's got his own problems.
So I guess Dan Snyder was one of the owners that voted to update or change Goodell's contract, right? It was 31-1, Jerry being the
Jones was the only one who did.
So that means Dan Snyder voted to whatever.
Dan's not actually there. I don't, and
or Tanya did, or somebody did on our behalf.
So they've got a proxy
but
there.
He did send a very friendly form letter in his absence.
Twice. There was another one today, apparently.
Yeah, the thing read like a 10th grade English assignment. Anyway,
so let's try and tie that up with the bow, right? And then move on, because we could talk about this all night. Do any of you think the owners meeting came and went? They did not vote Tuesday. I don't know that I've heard any more speculation on when the next opportunity for them to vote would be. So this is going to play out in the media and on Twitter and in the Washington Post and all that for how much longer? When's the next time that this might actually?
There's officially on the schedule another another owners meeting in March.
In March, the end of the year.
But I think go ahead, Derek.
If they wanted to put together a vote, they could do it tomorrow. I don't think it has to be at a league meeting. I don't think it has to be at an owners meeting.
So it's going to have to be a triggering event, which might be the release of the next report, or the next big allegation that rolls down. But let's not hold our breaths, right? Because they ain't happening today or tomorrow or next week.
Yeah. You have to believe that the oversight committee is going to release a report in the next 2 weeks, because they have to. Because
before midterms, before midterms,
because they might, that whole committee may change hands in the very near future, and I mean it's likely that it will. Yeah. So they're not going to wait till November. It's going to come out before then. I'm sure of that. And I don't know, the Mary Jo White thing. Who knows what? I mean, that lady, that's a total wild card right there. I don't know if she's going to come in on a white horse and save the day. She did interview. I think the most scintillating thing I've heard is that she interviewed the young lady who Dan
got paid off
in 7 figures, and then tried to pay off again to keep her from talking to Mary Jo White. And I'll say it again. How is attempting to pay off in silence a key witness in your own investigation
not against the law?
How is that not a fireable offense in and of itself? Like, what? I just don't understand how that gets whitewashed over. He apparently had his attorneys.
What? Hold on, sorry, I had to cut you off. Breaking news: Dan Snyder apparently has yet to talk to Mary Jo White in the investigation, according to team legal counsel John Brownlee. So she's been investigating him for 18 months, and he still hasn't talked to her.
He's been on his yacht, man.
How did that get presented? What kind of headline did you just see?
Darren Haynes via Twitter. He's the sports reporter for CBS. Breaking: Commanders owner Dan Snyder has yet to talk to Mary Jo White in the NFL's investigation, according to team legal counsel John Brownlee, courtesy of @WUSA9.
That's like Snyder in his Christmas card to his peers saying that unfortunately they've been denied the opportunity to give their side of the case. It's like, brother, how many subpoenas have they tried to serve you? He's had plenty of opportunity. He could call a press conference tonight, right, and explain everything.
Yeah, and everybody would be there. Nobody would miss that press conference. Everything would be public. Anything he wanted to say, people would be listening.
But I think Mary Jo White, that interview with the woman that Snyder paid off, and there's no nicer way to say it than that, and what she might tell her, that could be it right there.
Well, I'll throw in $20 to if she has to pay back the money to Snyder and speak. I mean, I got $20. I'll send her.
But again,
whatever I got in my checking account's hers.
NDAs are not enforceable in legal matters.
Correct.
Anyways, all right. I guess we can.
I wish I thought we were closer, gents. I guess is the way. It feels
No,
like
I think
we should be close, but I don't think we are.
Yeah, we took a step, maybe 2 yesterday, and it was a big step. No mistaking that. But yeah, I saw. What did I see? Again, let's go back. It was Sally Jenkins had a tweet about Dan Snyder soon to be out of public life or whatever it was that she said, and I replied, I'm like, I don't believe for a minute he's soon to be out of public life. And I probably won't believe he had to sell the team until somebody else has owned it for about 2 years.
She might know something we don't know, but I'll say this, if he doesn't go in the next year, he'll never go. He will never have the heat on him like he's got right now. If he's not gone by this time next year, he's not going. And I'm telling you right now, man, I think I'm done at that point, because I just can't live with
I share
that guy
your
owns the team I cheer for. I can't.
Honestly, I agree with you 100%, dude. If this isn't the end, it's getting really, 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 really tough to continue this.
It doesn't help that the team can't get out of its own way on the field either.
Nice they actually play football here? I thought there was bigger news.
Gee, Mark, you did that almost like a pro, buddy.
Anyways, I guess
we don't want to, I don't want to minimize any of what we just talked about, because that's real life shit. That's not, who wins football games is not even in the same conversation, really. But the truth is, for those of us who've been following this franchise for our entire lives, all of this would have a different hue to it if the team was 5-1 right now. It just would.
Mark, I see now that part I disagree with. We as fans would feel differently, but we wouldn't feel any differently about Dan Snyder at this point in time. He has lost
and that's
his
what I'm saying. As
opportunity.
fans, we'd feel differently, and we would not be as close. I share what both of you are saying. If this is the same thing a year from now, I might walk away too. It would be a lot easier to follow the football part. I love football. I like having a team to follow where I know the players and I know the ins and outs and the history. I'm not ready to give that up yet. I might be. I don't know if it's a year. You guys put a nice time frame on it. I don't know. That might be tomorrow for me. I'm surprised it wasn't 10 years ago, but here I am. It doesn't feel as good as it used to. The fucking team is 2-4 too. That doesn't help either. That's all I'm saying.
That's true.
Look, to Mark's point, we all know, and there's a definite level of momentum between us that we've been fans of this team for a long time, that understand that a lot of the reason why we suck is because that piece of shit's the owner. Okay. So if, to Mark's point, if this team had a resume similar to, the Chiefs or the Giants or the Steelers, multiple Super Bowl appearances / wins over the last 10 years, we might all still hate Dan Snyder and understand the guy's just a piece of garbage. But I guarantee you that the segment we just talked about for the last 41 minutes would have lasted about 14. You know what I mean? Because to Mark's point, we would have been more excited and more amped up about talking about how we're playing against the Packers, who are reeling for the opportunity to take over sole possession of first place in the NFC East, instead of saying, hey, how about we find let's take the Packers by surprise because they've lost 2 in a row. We're coming off a 10 days of rest, and maybe we can get lucky and steal one. The narrative's different. Mark's not wrong. 90% of the fans of this team would be talking about this conversation differently. And yes, they might hate Dan Snyder, but there wouldn't be the vitriol on Twitter if the team wasn't terrible.
I think we could not be fans of this team if we couldn't compartmentalize. We all compartmentalize. Like, there's no question in my mind. it has no impact on how I feel about the team. But by the same token, I'm also smart enough to know that there's a reason why we are always underperforming and why we're always talking about the draft in October instead of talking about leading the division. I mean, there's a rare exception, right? There, every 6 years or so, the universe throws us a bone just to keep us reeled in. But generally speaking, we suck, and it's not unrelated to who our owner is. And I know you guys know that. So that's why you can't say, I just want to focus on the football, because you're going to live in a fucking mire of misery for the rest of your fucking life if Dan Snyder is our owner. We will never win. We all know that. I know. So I'm just saying, you have to care. You cannot split those two things.
Yeah, but I will point out something that I read in yet another article about all of this, and that is nobody in Detroit is screaming about selling the team. And the Fords have been the single worst owner in the history of the NFL ever, as far as fielding a winning product. They can't do it. They just can't do it. And for whatever reason. And yet there isn't the same furor out there anywhere about the Detroit Lions.
They watched their number one pick go win a Super Bowl the first year he was wearing different colors.
Exactly.
Can you imagine if Kirk Cousins won a Super Bowl the year after he left here? Oh my God, the city would have burned.
Yeah. I can take losing. I really can. I just can't take losing and having that guy as our owner, man.
All right, well, let's talk about winning and losing. How about we move on?
Let's talk about football.
I do want to point out, and we'll talk shortly about what you can say was like a backdoor win that we tripped backwards up the stairs. It was fantastic. You still made it up the steps. I think the defense is playing a little better. There's still a lot to be loved on like a ton to be desired on offense. But defensively, I think we're in a much better place than we were 3 weeks ago. Even a lot of pressure. I think I saw a stat that Washington leads the league in pressures when not blitzing, and they also lead the league, and they're also the lowest percentage of blitzes in the NFL. So I guess maybe Del Rio is finally getting proven right that he can leave his 4 guys on an island and let them win their battles. The problem is the 7 guys behind them. I mean. But anyways, we can jump into the Packers.
Here's a stat for you, Derek, that kind of ties in with what you're talking about. I went just to look at my usual numbers and where we are and offensively, defensively, and our turnovers. None of those were very happy numbers. The one that I did a legit double take and looked at it twice to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong. The Washington Commanders are 3rd in the NFL in defensive third down percentage.
Mm-hmm.
3rd,
which ties directly into
stopping third downs defensively.
Yeah, ties directly into our defensive line quarterback pressures, hurries, knockdowns, whatever you want to call them.
When we can get them to third down.
So we just give up first downs on first and second down.
Or fourth.
And our problems on offense are the mirror image of that. We can't get out of third down. And in fact, that last week, I think we had like 7 or 8 third and like between 4 and 7
manageables.
Yeah. And we could not, I think we got 2 of them. One of them was by penalty. And we just been struggling, man. I'm not sure which one.
We're 26th in the league in third down conversions.
To be fair, this past week we had 7 third and manageables, and I think 4 of them we threw the ball 40 yards downfield on the attempt.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
And when it's 3rd and 3.
So I think is it fair to say, or I will say, fairly or not, that's one thing that I suspect will change this week is Taylor Heineke behind an offensive line that's really struggling to pass protect. I think we'll convert third downs. If we got a 3rd and 4, that's what he did. That was his best thing between the 20s, was converting third downs, not always just short ones. He'll do it with his legs. He'll roll out. He finds guys. He finds crossers underneath, and he's really good at that.
Isn't Green Bay like the top ranked passing defense in the league, though?
Well, they're the number 1 third down conversion defense in the league.
Yeah. So I don't know. how that.
But
I agree with you.
I am confident that we are going to have some time of possession on Sunday. I think they will. I think Taylor, with the running game behind him, will convert third downs. And my fear is that it's going to look a lot like it did last year, particularly towards the end of the year when defenses figured out that they don't have to sweat it until we get down in the red zone, and then we sort of fall apart for some of the same reasons that make everybody crazy when anyone criticized his Taylor Heineke. Things like his ability to see over the line and to have the arm to fit it into tight windows in that tight space down in the red zone. I mean, the Green Bay game last year was Exhibit A, right? 6 possessions in the red zone, 1 touchdown. I kind of fear that's where we might be headed, but my God, it's going to be easier to watch than it was the last few weeks with Carson Wentz, unable to convert anything.
Did any of you guys catch Taylor's press conference today after practice? Because, of course, as the starting quarterback now, he's the guy that sits there instead of Carson.
I did not. Do tell.
Fascinating press conference. And he actually spent quite a bit of time in California in the offseason with Carson's quarterback coach, personal quarterback coach, working on arm strength. And apparently he had a real problem with his hips. Like, he didn't use them at all prior to this. And so he has spent a significant amount of time working on this. I'm going to be very interested to see what he looks like on Sunday, just from a strength perspective. He was throwing all from the shoulder, apparently.
I heard, I don't know, one of the beat guys, I think it might have been Hoffman or maybe even Finley, say that they did see Heineke. He was, everywhere he went in the facility, during practice, before practice, after practice, everything, he had like a 2-pound weighted wristband on his arm. Everything he did he had that on when he was throwing, when he was stretching, everything in an attempt. So I hope to God that Heineke can. I hope he can turn the team around. Like I have my concerns, and most of them are not centered around Heineke.
No.
So Bob, Mark and I played a lot of golf this weekend, and I hit my driver right down the middle of the fairway almost every time. So anything is possible with training and a focus on technique.
Interestingly enough, they asked Heineke what else he was doing to work on stuff, and he said, I'm playing a lot of golf, because the hip motion in a proper swing is very similar to the hip motion in a proper throwing motion. And he said, so when I'm not on the practice field, he said, I go play golf, because you've got to use the same muscles in the same way. It was a fascinating interview.
John, to bring it back to the same type of analogy, my concern isn't how well Heineke can hit the driver. My concern is when it calls for a driver and his caddy hands him a putter.
Right.
So that's more of what I'm worried about is how we're going to actually, the people pulling the strings are going to set him up to succeed more than his actual capability of doing it.
Well, I heard Rivera, at least he paid lip service to it. I've heard him a couple times already say fitting the game plan to what Taylor does well. But
I hope he does.
But we've heard that before.
I hope he does.
Right off
I hope
the
they
bat.
don't rein him in. I hope they don't rein him in, because early Heineke was so good because he was Heineke. He did Heineke things, and you didn't know what he was going to do, and neither did the defense. But then I got the feeling they tried to rein him in, probably because he was putting himself at risk, and we didn't have anyone behind him. But I hope they let Taylor Heineke be Taylor Heineke and do not try to restrain him in any way, because he's not a pocket passer. If you don't have to worry about him taking off and running, then you're not going to worry too much about him, I don't think, as a defense.
I think we'll also see a difference in the play balance, though, John. You go back and look at the play balance last year, and we ran the ball like 45% of the time and threw the ball 55% of the time, as opposed to what we're doing with Carson, which is running the ball 35% of the time and throwing it 65% of the time. If we actually back off and get much closer to a 50-50 split like we did last year with Taylor, and hopefully Turner will do that, I think that would have done Carson wonders as well. That's the thing that really pisses me off, is that I think this defense or this offense would have been a lot better if we had simply decided to get much closer to balance. But I think almost all of us have said this on the board at some point in time or another. It feels like Turner had a new toy on Christmas Day, and he wants to use that toy every single chance he gets, instead of continuing to use the toys that were in his box in conjunction with the new toy. You know, I've got a guy that can throw the ball 70 yards flat-footed. Let's go out and throw the ball 70 yards flat-footed. And I got a problem with that.
Does anyone remember, as I do? God, I'm like all negative tonight, and I apologize for that. I'm generally not that negative, but didn't Taylor struggle pretty bad in his preseason outing where he sort of threw a game away late with a couple of really bad back-to-back passes?
Yeah, I don't think he looked great in preseason, but I mean, it's preseason. The guy's a gamer. I think that's what we're all like. Even though a lot of us, we had some energetic arguments on the board about Wentz versus Heineke. Like, why did they go get Wentz? Should they have gone and gotten Wentz? Because, you know, some people felt like Heineke's limitations were because of his inexperience, while others thought it was because of his physical ability. But I don't think anyone doubts that he's going to give us a spark. And even Rivera spoke to that like the guys rally behind him. And I don't think it can be overstated. When he came in to that, when he was in that Tampa game, his first year, I mean, that was, you could just see, you could feel the electricity. You could see the guys around him take it up a notch. I don't know whether it's just leadership or what it is, but he's definitely got some kind of it factor. So I'm like you guys. I'm hoping that we're at least going to play better. I'm worried because Green Bay, even though they're 3-3, I think they're second place in their division. It's not like they're in trouble, but they're coming off of 2 straight losses to teams that they should not have lost to, we would think. So you got to think they're going to not want to lose the third.
Well, I tell you what, I watched the condensed version of Green Bay's against the Jets game because I sort of wanted to see how in the world did the Jets beat the Packers. Those aren't last year's Packers. Mr. Rogers was under severe heat during that game. And not shockingly, it's Joe Barry, right? Isn't he the DC up in Green Bay? There was a drive at the beginning of about 9.5 minutes left in that game. The Packers got the ball, or the Jets got the ball back up, I think by 2 scores at that time. And they went on a 7-minute, 60-play, 12-play drive where they did not throw the ball. They ran, I had it up here before and I lost it because I was fucking around with other stuff. But they had your 1 yard, 12 yards, 23 yards, 12 yards, 8. They ran all the way down the field. They got several down close goal line plays where Green Bay stacked it up. They just kept running the ball and they kept running the ball and they kept running the ball. And eventually they got the field goal, but they ran essentially, let the air out of the ball. And the game was essentially over after that. And I'm sitting there thinking, if ever we are going to run the football, this has got to be it, right? We got Robinson back, supposedly getting stronger and healthier. Gibson is healthy. McKissick is healthy. Run the ball, sustain drives, wear them down.
Green Bay is very close to being 1-5 right now because they beat the Vikings, Giants. Excuse me, they lost to the Vikings, Giants, and Jets. They beat the Bears, the Bucks on the road, and the Patriots, but they barely beat the Bucks, and they barely beat the Patriots. Patriots took them to overtime, so they could easily be 2-4 or even 1-5. So I think you're right. And they're not their passing game, especially. They got this committee of wide receivers, none of whom it's like Dobbs, Lazard, and Cobb and Watkins, and then they got Tanya in the tight end, all with 200 yards receiving. They don't have a really electric wide receiver. And Rodgers is averaging 6.5 yards a catch or a reception,
I mean, it's a winnable game, right? And by any accounts, it's a winnable game if you don't shoot yourself in the foot with penalties and to unforced errors, which we seem to be pretty good at this year.
I think it's worth mentioning that in those wins, these aren't the Bucks of 2 years ago. These aren't the Patriots of 3-4 years ago. We're not talking about powerhouse teams anymore that are on their way to the Super Bowl. Nobody's worried about the Bucs and the Patriots right now.
Yeah.
Somebody better be worried about the Jets. I
That
watched
team plays hard, man.
I watched part of that game. This is not the Jets, to use your phrase, Mark. This is not the Jets from last year either.
Nope.
These guys aren't. They're not messing around anymore, and they're playing some tough, hard-nosed football on both sides of the ball.
And not to get carried away, but it's not because of Zach Wilson. He is not carrying that team. He was awful in that game. Awful.
No, they're doing it in spite of the quarterback position right now.
Yeah, they're running the ball and playing defense. So are the Giants. Yep. So are the Titans.
Eagles.
So are the Eagles.
I don't know about the Eagles.
The Eagles can do both. They can pretty much do it all.
Jalen Hurts is a legit quarterback. We need to
Jalen Hurts has more rushing touchdowns than he has passing.
He does, but he's still a good quarterback.
Hey, that's part of the rushing game as far as I'm concerned.
That's what I'm saying. Is you were talking about being effective in the rushing game. That was my point.
Yep.
Okay.
So I got to say this about the Jets, because it was a guy I wanted desperately. The one guy that did not show up in the highlight packages that I've watched, Sauce Gardner. And the reason he's not showing up is because ain't nobody open on his side of the field.
Oh, he showed up in the highlight packages at the end when he had a cheese head on his head and he was walking off the field.
Yeah, but I mean, but
Lazard came up and swatted it off.
All of the plays that the Green Bay Packers were making were on the other side of the field. There was never a Green Bay offensive highlight against Gardner because, well, he's just killing it.
Yeah.
I
remember you talking about him. I know you wanted him bad. So here's a hopeful thing. Coming into this game, Washington is 24th, 29th in the league in scoring. This was after scoring 28 and 30 or whatever it was the first two games. 17 points a game right now. Over the last 4 games, we have scored 12 points per game. While we're giving up, by the way, 22.5. But if you're going to start winning games starting this weekend, you're going to have to control the ball, keep it out of Rodgers' hands because he's going to make some plays. But we're going to need more than 12 points. So we coming off. Got to get a couple of touchdowns.
We're coming off the Thursday night appearance. We've had a long week, an extra long week. Scott Turner better have a freaking game plan. I know, and I know that they weren't really sure about Wentz, but they had to know. I mean, it was even we watching that game were like, I don't know if Wentz is gonna, if he's okay. Didn't take a genius to figure that out. So they need to come in with whether it's Bob's game plan where we're pounding it down their throat all the way down the field over and over, or whatever it is, but they got to have some kind of a real plan.
So Wentz knew Thursday night. Wentz told Taylor Heineke walking off the field, pretty sure I broke my finger. And Heineke's response was, I'm going to pretend I did not hear that.
Yeah, he said he had a big golf trip planned.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I got a golf trip planned for this weekend. I don't want to hear that, man.
Well, now that I understand. Yeah. Like, suck it up, Carson. I'll be back next week.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, man, I got a long weekend. I don't want to hear that, buddy. But yeah, so yeah, Carson knew, and if Carson knew, the team knew. I mean, you say what you have to say in front of the media, but he didn't fly to LA for a second opinion. He flew to LA for the surgery he got.
Yeah.
What do you think? Are you buying or selling on whether Carson Wentz starts another game in 2022?
I'm buying.
You're buying?
It totally depends on what the record is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's be real. If Taylor comes in and wins 4-5 straight, we win with center. You think they're going back to Wentz? I don't. Because at that point, then we're in the mix. You're going to go back to a rusty Carson Wentz at that point?
If you want to get serious, we're technically in the mix now. We're one game out of the wild card.
One game out of the wild card.
We are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to get if we win 5 straight, we're in the mix for the division.
But we're in the mix. We're in the mix, but you have to view it through the context of we're averaging 10 points over the last 4 games a game.
If Heineke comes in the offense, look, when Heineke was the quarterback for the last year, for 16 games, we averaged 2 points more per game than we're scoring now. I hate to break it to you, 2 points more per game than we're scoring now ain't a division-winning offense. It's still as bad as it was before.
No,
so that's my concern is we still have the people at the helm that have been calling the plays for the last 9 quarterbacks that have come in here. And what's the common thread? They all suck, okay? Regardless of what their name is, the offense has been bad, okay? I'm sorry to be a wet blanket. I'm rooting for Heineke. I rooted for Heineke in 16 podcasts last year, and I hoped he would be the guy that would take it up. So
there are rumors that they're going to move Cosme to guard. I've heard it like 3 times, and Rivera got asked about it because his sub is playing well at tackle.
You talking about Lucas?
Yes, because Lucas is playing so well. There's rumors that they may bring Cosme back, but at guard to beef up the line. And Rivera was asked about it today, and his face turned red, and he said, I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff, obviously. But I think I would love to see that happen.
Derek, I'm with you, man, about rooting for Taylor and all that. I think I like where you were going with that. I was rooting for him, by the way, at halftime in the Bears game.
Who's not rooting for him, for God's sake?
I wanted him to come off the bench.
Everybody is. And for those, if anybody's listening to this podcast that isn't a part of the board, this extreme stance I'm taking probably doesn't make a lot of sense because you haven't witnessed the last 15 days of hell. But the point is that me personally, I don't care who's quarterback. I just want to win football games. I want to root for my team and win. You know what I mean? I want to be able to watch them on Sunday and watch them win. And if it's Taylor Heineke, if it's Sam Howell, if it's fucking Jake Fromm, and he's the difference maker, I don't care. I don't care how it happens. So
based on what we've seen the last 4 weeks and how our starting quarterback was
we better see a different game plan.
Or a quarterback who's able to function in it. I mean, I don't know, Derek. You've been studying film, I know, and you're a lot harder on Turner than I have been. I don't know how much of the failures that we've had on 3rd and 4 have been what the quarterback's doing versus what the play is called. I just don't know the X's and O's well enough, but I guarantee you will see a difference on Sunday because the quarterback he's all about converting 3rd and 4. That's what Taylor Heineke does.
I hope so. I hope so. Because I went back and I looked at last year's games with Taylor Heineke on 3rd and 4. You know what I saw? Empty backfield fade pattern, which I saw 16 times on Thursday night, and it never worked. I saw the same play calls when Taylor Heineke was the quarterback. So you know what? I hope Taylor's got the balls to say, F you, Turner. You call that play, I'm running behind the wide receivers and getting the first down. And if you don't like it, bench me.
It's interesting because I just posted something similar on the board, which is I think Wentz is doing whatever Scott Turner tells him and only what Scott Turner tells him. I just get that sense. It's his first year. Turner's not Mr. Flexibility, apparently. I think Wentz is doing exactly what he's told to do. And I think Taylor, he wants to do what he's told, but he just can't. He's going to be Taylor. And if he sees an opening, he's going to say, I
hope he does.
Going.
Please do it, Taylor.
I agree about that. What do you call it? Taylor's doing Taylor things. That's what every time he plays, you say that. I mean, I'll shut up on Wentz after this, but I'm going to say it again. I don't think Carson looked to me in the last 4 games like a lesser version of Jason Campbell. Jason Campbell was brilliant when he had his first read open and he had time to wind up and pitch it. The minute he had to come off his first read, it just all fell apart. And I swear that's what I see from Carson Wentz, that sort of deer in the headlights and the hesitation and the happy feet the minute that first read's not there. Taylor doesn't have that problem. Remember that wonderful film from last year of him going through all 5 reads? I think it was in the game winner against Atlanta when he finally found McKissick out in the flat. It was like his 5th read. That's Taylor. I mean, he's gonna make good plays and bad plays because that's what he does. But his brain doesn't freeze up.
And he does have a year of experience under his belt. Not that we want to buffer anyone's.
And apparently, he's been working out with his hips, so his hips are going to be better.
I think it's worth noting that we've been more positive about Taylor Heineke in the last in the last 10 minutes than we have about Carson Wentz on any previous.
Well, Taylor hasn't played yet. Let's check with us next week.
And the favorite guy in any city is the number 2 quarterback.
Next week we'll be gushing about Sam Howell.
Just ask the folks in Denver.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing I keep coming back to mentally, and I'm trying not to get too excited about this, is Taylor didn't have the weapons last year that this offense has this year. There was Terry McLaurin, and the opposing defense focused on Terry McLaurin. And we were determined to use Antonio Gibson between the tackles last year because he was our running back. Well, now we have a running back to use between the tackles. And Antonio Gibson's become this, well, for the last 3 games, Mr. Invisible. And I'm not sure what that's all about, because I vaguely remember this electric guy catching balls in game 1 of the year.
Oh, he did great the last 2 games. They just didn't give him the damn ball.
I know. I mean, he touched the ball like 3 times against the Bears or something. And every single time he had something positive happen, but he's not touching the ball that much. But I mean, I look around and Curtis Samuel was on the sideline all last year. Jahan Dotson was playing for Penn State last year. He apparently practiced today. It was limited. I'm not sure whether I want to see him back. I saw a couple of clips, and in all honesty, he looked a little hesitant to me. He looked like he doesn't trust that hamstring. And if he doesn't trust that hamstring, I don't think he needs to suit up on Sunday.
It's also only Wednesday. Just pointing that out.
You're right.
That can change in the next 72 hours.
But it's also a hamstring. And those things can be bad. I had a bad hamstring in junior high, Derek.
Well,
it bothered me the entirety of the track season, no matter what I did.
But he's been out, what, 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
No, just 2 weeks.
He's missed 2 games.
He's missed 2 games.
Yeah, he missed 2 games, but those games were 4 days apart too.
This would be week 3.
Yeah,
but I'm with you. He doesn't need to play if he's not right. Curtis Samuels, Terry McLaurin, McKissick, Gibson, even De'Ami Brown, right? So Taylor's got some weapons that he didn't have last year.
Oh, by the way, Cole Turner looked pretty good against the Bears too.
I want to see more of him.
I want to see more of Mr. Turner. I was very. Did he drop a ball? I think everything he touched, he hung on to. He only had like 3 catches, but I think he was only targeted 3 times. Derek's going to go look it up for me like the good guy that he is.
I have to say something about the Chicago Bears. They deserve to lose that game for wearing those uniforms. They came out and I thought, I'm adjusting the color on my TV. What the fuck? The Bears have in my opinion, one of the most classy, timeless uniforms. When they wear the black and the helmet and I love that old look. They came out in this, we want to pretend to be the Bengals junior varsity look. They deserve to lose that game, and they didn't.
It was almost creamsicle, Buccaneer creamsicle. Wasn't it?
Brutal. I almost didn't want to.
Everybody said we were the Steelers if you ordered it from Wish. That was the Browns or the Clemson Tigers had you ordered it from Wish.
Yeah, just bad.
Officially, Cole Turner had 2 targets, 2 receptions, 23 yards. Here's the interesting thing, though.
I wanted to mention one stat that I looked at or that I noticed because you were talking about Mark.
Well, let Derek say his stat that he was just about to lay on us. I want to hear both of these stats.
Apparently, he played in 93% of the snaps on offense, and he only had 2 catches and 2 targets.
Cole Turner. Okay.
Wow.
He should have had more targets.
All right, John, what you got?
I don't really feel like telling you now.
I didn't say anything, John.
The man was in the middle of saying a stat.
Oh.
Okay.
God, is it hot in this bar or what?
I don't know. I need a drink.
I may need another drink.
What's up, John?
I love you, brother.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, you two had a golf orgy this weekend. We know all about it.
He kept handing me my putter when I needed my driver.
At least he wasn't handing you his putter.
I might be the next Scott Turner.
Nah,
John,
Scott
do you
Turner
want to-
wishes he was as sexy as you, brother. Come on, lay it on us.
So the Packers have had 3 games of 14 points or less this year. So we were talking about how inept our offense has been, but the Packers are.
And they have a Hall of Fame quarterback.
That's
Hall
right.
of Fame.
So
That's crazy.
it is crazy.
Hey, Denver's got a Hall of Fame quarterback now too, but their offense ain't exactly producing either. At some point in time, everybody in this league, not
Tampa,
named Tom
you could say
Brady,
the same
hits a
thing.
wall.
You could say the same thing about Tampa Bay. I was gonna say Tampa Bay this year.
Well,
Well,
Brady
and
doesn't
even
look like Brady this year. Nope,
He
you're
doesn't.
right. Although Brady's spending a lot more time on his ass this year than he has in the last couple. Did you
Kind of
see
funny
the
how that works,
video of
isn't it?
him yelling at his offensive line? Holy cow.
Yeah, I think
they
he
were
was
his kids
quoted
or
as
something.
he was saying, "You guys are so much better, so much fucking better than you're playing right now." Is essentially what he was telling them. Yeah. So are we seeing the end of an era here? It occurs to me, Wilson, Rodgers, Tom Brady, all kind of struggling, and
I think Wilson will be back. I think people are selling him. The contract that they sign, or the trade that they made for him, if he doesn't come out and just look and just light it up, he's going to have everyone in the universe all over his ass. I mean, he's looked bad, and I think his act is not going over very well. Kind of that. I don't know all of his catchphrases, but he's got kind of that.
let's ride.
Yes, he's got that kind of goofy leadership style, but it's only goofy until he starts playing like Russell Wilson. And I just think he's too good of a quarterback for this to be what we're going to see the rest of the way.
Russell's over 30 now, and a lot of his game is predicated on that whole mobility thing. And he doesn't have the same wheels he did when he was 25. He's been hurt a couple of times. And
I still think we're not seeing Russell Wilson right now. I mean, I think you're seeing a guy that's never played for another offense, and he's struggling.
Which kind of feeds into what we've been talking about Carson a little bit too. And I've said this a couple of times on the board. The Air Coryell offense is not easy. No quarterback has ever transitioned to the Air Coryell offense and been brilliant year one, ever. In fact, Joe Theismann was so not brilliant when Joe Gibbs brought the Air Coryell offense to Washington that Joe Gibbs rewrote the offense week 6 of the season to save his job, and dumbed the whole thing down and went to John Riggins because Theismann wasn't getting it, as good as Theismann was. And I'm disappointed, but I'm not terribly surprised that Wentz is having a hard time. And I'm not going to be shocked if Taylor comes out on Sunday and looks leaps and bounds better, because he's been studying this same playbook since 2017. He's been in the quarterback room with Scott Turner on and off for the last 5 or 6 years. And he's got a whole year in this offense playing on the field that Carson Wentz does not have. And so I fully expect him to look a little better this next week than Carson did, no matter what the offensive line does, no matter what the running backs do, no matter what the play calling looks like. I expect him to look a little better on Sunday than Carson has looked this year because of that whole quarterback in a new offense thing. Every single quarterback that changed teams in the offseason is struggling.
It's fair. It's also a low bar.
It is. Except for Russell Wilson. It's a low
Wentz.
bar.
I mean, being better than Wentz. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about Wentz versus the other guys that changed teams. And no real names changed teams except Russell Wilson. He's the only bona fide winner who's ever been in the MVP discussion like Wentz has been, that changed things. Mitch Trubisky is now on the bench. He's never really been, and I was a Trubisky guy in March, by the way. That was the guy I wanted.
He balled in the second half last week. He played really well
after being benched for Kenny Pickett, and then
Pickett went out before halftime with a concussion, I think. And Trubisky came in and played very well, and they won that. They won.
Well,
but
Sunday,
he's
Sam
still
Howell
Mitch
walked
Trubisky
out on his first field ever.
Right.
Watching in uniform. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just because I'm picturing Taylor doing one of his patented end zone dives and getting landed on by somebody a lot bigger than him. So
wouldn't that be a Washington thing? Just
I mean, knock on wood,
Oh
shame
my
to me for
God.
even bringing it up, but he
He
does play.
comes
He does
out,
play
looks
kind of
brilliant for a drive, and then gets his collarbone broken.
Could bring on the Jake Fromm era sooner than we think.
Wow.
Well, gentlemen, that was a roller coaster.
Yeah, sorry for all the expletives and vim and vinegar to start out. I'm so tired of Dan Snyder. I get.
Well, and I think we all feel where you're at, brother. There's not one of us that doesn't feel where you're at.
Not just Snyder, but with this team, everybody wants to point fingers, and I think everybody has a legitimate argument about multiple facets of the team. The quarterback needs to be better. The defense needs to be better. The offense needs to be better. The offensive line needs to be better. The offensive coordinator needs to be better. The head coach needs to be better. All of these things that we can look at and we can say, where do you start? So the frustration is that how do you point at one thing and say that is the difference in this team? You know, like if you look at Russell, you were just talking about Russell Wilson. You have a lot of confidence that Russell Wilson's going to overcome an offense he doesn't really know. Can you say the same thing about Wentz? Do you believe that in 8 weeks in week 8, 9, or 10, he's going to be that much better than he is in week 4?
In fairness, John didn't say Russell was going to look like Russell again this year. He just said Russell would look like Russell again. It might be next year, right, John?
Right.
Yeah, I just
he just hasn't closed.
I mean, I don't think we knew. I think we all had doubts about Wentz. I mean, you know, so when the team says it's Wentz, we're like, well, maybe this will work out. That's what we do. Because what choice do we have? But I don't think any of us was pining for that. So he was already an open question coming in, as Mark has done a good job explaining like that, what he's looked like the last, really since the first year and a half, 2 years in Philly, he's looked like a flawed guy, an underperforming guy. So I don't know.
But
I really don't know. But it's going to be a tough decision. That's why I think they got to look at Howell sometime this season, because you got to know going into next year are we going to continue with Wentz, or are we going to?
Unless Taylor comes in and balls out and we're in a playoff chase, then you got to play him. You lose
that would be something.
You lose the whole team if you put him on the bench then. So
Taylor's got to know, right? This is his chance.
This is it.
Probably his big chance.
Yeah.
My point was that we watch the games on Sundays and we look at a lot of things that don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line is in shambles, and you're asking Wentz to drop back 7 steps out of a shotgun and try to put the ball 40 yards downfield on 3rd and 2 when you've run the ball for 100 yards in the first half. Okay, we watched the game on Sunday, and we watched Wentz drop back, and he's got time. And when he throws a swing pass to Gibson in the flat, that should be an easy score because he's got 3 linemen in front of him and 1 defender, and Gibson has to take it off of his shoelaces in order to make the catch. We watched the defense where now apparently Jackson is refuting that he ever said he wanted to get traded, but Ron Rivera came out and publicly said that we are thinking about moving him into a place that he's a better fit. You signed him, you fucking idiot. And now you're asking him to play zone, and then you're saying that he's now got to go somewhere where he makes more sense. We also screamed and yelled over the whole offseason that we needed an upgraded linebacker because Jamin Davis isn't ready to be a premier guy, and Cole Holcomb is a guy who's going to lead the team in tackles, but he's a guy. We all saw this on the outside looking in, and now we're 6 weeks into the season, and we're all like, well, I guess we were right.
Well, so none of us are surprised, I don't think. I'm surprised at how bad it's been.
Mm-hmm.
But heading into year 3, this was the year where we were going to find out if Ron Rivera, who in his coach-centric role as essentially, he's got the last word on personnel, he's got the last word on everything. This is a poorly organized front office and coaching staff. They are not putting the players they have in the right positions. They don't have the right players. Derek, you were talking about the litany of all the different specific things that are wrong. The OL, it's a well-coached team. You can tell a well-coached team when you see it.
11. It's really hard to tell a difference between 11 players and 12, man. That game gets really chaotic. Sometimes 12 seems right. You're looking at it, you're like, it's 12, right? I mean, let's not be too harsh.
It's a poorly coached team, and I'm not sure I see that getting better.
I think we had 12 on the field and we still gave up a touchdown.
Yes.
Yeah, this hilarious thing is we throw an extra guy out there and we still fuck it up.
Yeah, but then we play a man short and we stop them on the goal line for the game winning, because there were only 10 guys on the field for that final play against Chicago. So
and by the way, and I said this to John over the weekend, the Bears win that game easily if they just let Fields run it in. I don't know what they're dropping him back. He ran circles around us, and they did not let him run down in the goal line. I didn't get it. I'm grateful, but I don't get it.
Well, we're back to the same thing we did with Taylor last year. Reined him in because, we didn't want him hurt.
I guess.
Watching that game, I wasn't sure Fields was going to finish it.
Yeah, I think
he was
Fields
beat up.
Seeing double a couple times in that game.
Maybe.
He kept doing his yoga breathing. I could see him like.
Maybe they were calling runs for him, but he couldn't. He was like, fuck no, I'm throwing. On that happy note, are we beating the Packers this weekend or not? Let's get our predictions on the record here.
Oh God.
I picked Washington in the pool this weekend.
I'm not betting against Taylor Heineke in his first appearance of the year. I just can't, because that guy, there's just something about him, and so I'll go out on a limb. I got it right last week. I'll pick us to win again, even though it's insane.
It's defensible. It's defensible. I'm tempted. I'm going to wait until Sunday.
I picked that, and I say that because I not only have a little bit of faith in Taylor and the weapons that he's got, but I also have growing faith in the guys that put their hand in the dirt on defense. Deron Payne and John Allen, to use a soccer phrase at the moment, they're undroppable right now.
And Sweat's right there.
Yeah, and for that matter, I mean, Obata had the game of his life against the Bears. Obata was brilliant. I'm even seeing Ridgeway flash, and he was a guy that wasn't supposed to play at all for the Cowboys this year. They were going to leave him on the practice squad all season long unless they had injuries. And, I mean,
Smith Williams is
Williams is playing well. Tuhill is playing well.
They've come on.
Every single guy on that defense or on that defensive line is making some plays right now. And I watched the Jets chew the Green Bay offensive line up and spit them out. Rodgers didn't have time most of the day. And I don't think he's going to have much time on Sunday.
Jets blitzed them a lot more than we blitz. We're going to need our down 4 to get on him.
Right. But the Jets aren't getting there without the blitz.
I think we can.
I think we're going to have to. I hope we do. I think that's probably the key to the game.
I picked us in this for no other reason than, for some reason, we always find a way to play Rodgers tough. The last couple of years, so we lost him in 21 and in 19, but in 18, when this team was a shell, if I'm remembering correctly, I think we ended up hanging like a 40 burger on him. So it's just kind of those weird anomalies. But I think somehow we figure out a way to win this football game. I think Taylor Heineke's a spark, kind of like you change your goaltender in the middle of a game. And it just kind of gives the guys around you a little oomph. I don't know that Taylor Heineke's the long-term answer. I don't know that. I'm not going to rehash all the rest of it, but I think Heineke's a spark. I think he makes some plays. I hope enough of them convert, and I think our defense is playing well enough right now that there's no Devontae Adams on the other side of the ball anymore. I'm wondering if Rodgers trusts Watson, because Watson, the first play of the season,
dropped that ball.
Rodgers dropped it in a bucket. Should have been a 75-yard touchdown. Dropped it. I don't think that relationship has been amended yet. So I think we find a way to win. And I don't know that it's going to be convincing, but I think it could be a little funky. You know what I mean?
I have no faith in Scott Turner. I have complete faith in Joe Barry.
That's I like that. I like that. You guys have got me. You've got me more tempted. I go into picks like as if I had to bet $1,000 of my own money. Who am I betting on?
And for the record, you're killing all of us in pick'em right now. So obviously, whatever you do works.
Killing is a little strong. I'm still not feeling it. I might feel it more towards the end of the week, but right now I'm leaning against.
Hey,
Rodgers ain't going to lose 3 in a row to teams he should beat. So
I am 6-0 in fantasy football, which is kind of like the skies are going to open up and the rapture is going to be upon us. And my quarterback's on a bye this week, so I almost plugged Taylor Heineke in there. I did not because I kept looking at that number 1 pass defense, but I thought about it for the reasons that we've talked about. So the Heineke hive is alive. So, and when we pull it out, go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was going to say, so I've got and I don't want to talk about this. I just want to drop this out there and let you guys think about it for a week. We've all talked about the fact that Carson Wentz is on a 1-year trial because we can drop him at the end of the year without impacting our salary cap. Guess who else's contract is up at the end of the year?
Yep. Mr. Heineke.
And Mr. Heineke's on a sweet deal right now, and he's done at the end of 2022. So he's not just playing for his quote unquote last chance. He's playing for the next contract, whatever that looks like, whether it's a starter's contract or a backup contract or, you know, and I think that'll be a much more interesting conversation after we have 60 minutes worth of tape on him in 2022 that isn't preseason tape. But, you know, that thought occurred to me this week while I was jousting with other people.
Look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Heineke hangs 350 and 4 touchdowns. I hope to God that he's the answer at the quarterback position.
We didn't have to be the answer. He just has to beat the Packers.
For this week,
in
general.
We have Heineke's twin brother.
I want Howell to be the answer. I want Wentz to be.
Yes.
I just want the fucking answer. I don't care where it comes from.
I think Howell might be Heineke with a better arm. I really
do. He's got an arm.
Here's my response to that. Derek, I want the guy starting for my football team this weekend to be the answer. I don't care what that guy's team is. I don't care what that guy's number is.
Right.
I just want him to be the answer, and I want my football team to look respectable. I don't want to be depressed at 3:00 Central Time on Sunday.
Right.
And as Heineke is there talking to Melissa Stark or wherever the sideline reporter is at the end of the game, we just pulled it out on the last drive. I want to hear the deafening chants.
Sell the
team. Sell the team. And then my weekend will be made.
Well, I'll be yelling it at home, bro.
So say we all.
Oh. All right, gents. It's been a pleasure. Missed you guys last week. But,
hey, Miss Paul this week.
Yeah,
Miss Paul this week.
Get
Hope
better,
you're feeling
brother
better,
Paul.
buddy.
All right, boys.